Welcome to On Song International, home of original music. If you like what you hear, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell below. Hello, good folks. This is Ken Cunin from On Song International. Hope you're keeping well wherever you may be. All right, a lot of you out there are songwriters, singer-songwriters. You're part of bands. The thing that you have in common is that you create original music. And once you've written that song, or you've written a collection of songs, the next step for people to actually hear your material is to record it. Now, once upon a time, your options were fairly limited. You'd go find the local recording studio close to your house, and if you were in a small city, there might not be that many, and you were hopeful that you had a good room, that you had plenty of good gear, and most importantly, an engineer and or producer who could get those sounds that you're after onto to recorded piece of material. So today, fortunately, we got a lot of options, and one of those options are the home recording, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And a lot of times, where do you begin? And fortunately, in this world, and particularly with YouTube, you have so many different educational channels that will give you a leg up to help you prevent making a lot of mistakes. And the world of recording, it's much like the world of songwriting. You got to actually practice it a fair bit before you get pretty adept and skillful at it. So today what I want to do is I want to break down a couple of the necessities. Where do you start? Okay. The first place that you start is you're going to have to capture an instrument, and often your instrument could be your voice, could be an acoustic guitar, could be a piano, etc. But one thing that's really important to understand is that you want to make sure, for example, with the guitar, that the intonation is great, that the action is good, that the instrument stays in tune. And because if it doesn't, you could have a $15,000 microphone that is aimed at that guitar, and the microphone could be going into a $3,000 preamp, and that's going into a $2,000 audio interface. But again, if we don't have it right at the source, if we don't have a good instrument to begin with, doesn't matter how good the other equipment is. So that is why we often say you buy nice or you buy twice. And what I mean by that is that often what you might think is a bargain, you pay for later on. So in many cases, I found that it's often a better idea to save up a little bit longer for gear that's going to be useful, not only today, but in 10 years, that you don't grow out of, and that you don't curse every single time that you try to get a good sound out of. So that's it. Instruments first. Next thing that we want to take into consideration is the room in which you're recording. Now, a lot of home studios, they might be a spare bedroom, they might be a garage, and a lot of those sounds that you produce out of that, they might be really echoey, they can be quite cavernous, and again, that's something that you can't escape. So understanding that is why you have to also understand things like room treatment. For example, if you look behind me, these are some acoustic panels that I've put together, and they make a world of difference in deadening the sound. While there's still some liveliness in this room, particularly in the home studio, you'd rather have something that's a little bit more on the dead side, because later in production, you can add reverb. Whereas if it's the other way around, if it's too lively, you can't really take that away. All right, so what's going to be capturing, whether it's your voice or whether an instrument? Well, the next thing is microphones, and there are so many different options for microphones that are out there, ranging from $50 cheap microphones to microphones that could be $15,000. And essentially with microphones, you get three main categories. You have something called a ribbon mic, which I don't have in front of me right now. It's a very sensitive microphone. But the two most common are a large condenser microphone. This is an example. This is out of actually China. This is a company called 3U. It's a Warbler MK4. And what's great about a large condenser microphone is that it captures a certain ambiance. So whether you're putting it in front of a vocal, you might get the breath of a singer. If you're putting it in front of an acoustic instrument, you're going to get the width of it. So it is very sensitive. That's a good thing and a bad thing. If your room treatment isn't good, that's a problem, because it's going to capture more than you want. What I like about this microphone in particular is it basically replicates the sound of an old-time microphone called a Telefunken 251, which would be way out of my budget. I think it's about a $12,000 microphone. So this $500 does everything that I need in terms of vocals, percussion, etc. Love it. But let's look at another very popular microphone. This is a Shure SM57, a real workhorse that not only is used live, it's used in the recording studios the world over. It can capture drums, electric guitars, vocals, acoustics, you name it. And what the difference between a dynamic microphone and a large condenser or a condenser microphone is the dynamic tends to more exclusively capture what it's aimed at. So you're not going to get a lot of a room sound. And particularly if you're in a room that's not well treated, that'll be one of your best friends. Shure is a great company. They also make a microphone that I do own as well that's called the SM7B, which is a beefier version of this, used in many sessions for vocals in particular. And it's a beefier sound in terms of what you're looking at in a dynamic microphone. So I would definitely recommend that as a microphone, particularly if in a room that doesn't have great treatment. All right, so from the microphone, we got a couple different options. A lot of people, if your budget is a little bit more restrictive, your microphone is going to go straight into something called an audio interface. And essentially what your audio interface does is you got the microphone where you have an instrument that goes directly in, and it's going to go from there to your computer. So it's really a conduit from the analog world to the digital world. This is a Roland quad capture. Roland makes some great projects. They don't make products. They don't actually make this audio interface anymore, but they have some updated versions. And the thing about interfaces is they also have something called a preamp in them. And the thing about preamps with your interface is that you want to make sure that you have one that the sound itself is fairly transparent, that it's not too colored. Because if you have interface that really colors your sound, then you can't take it away when you're editing that sound. So if you're looking for an interface, you want to find one that has a very transparent sound. Myself, I like to, before I get to the actual interface itself, I like for my microphones to go into a mic preamp, and they can be solid state, they can be tube amps as well, and that gives you a little extra volume, and it also gives you a little extra control before it hits the interface and before it gets to your computer. Within the computer, there's what we call digital audio workspaces or workstations, otherwise known as DAW, and that has taken away what was once 2-inch tape or different formats of tape, and that is where you record everything. And within those programs, you'll have something called plugins. And essentially what plugins are is they replicate the hardware version of things like equalizers and compressors and delays. And what's quite amazing is these digital audio workspaces, they're quite affordable, and they come with all these plugins that are stock. And I think it's really important, particularly in the beginning, that you learn to use those actual stock plugins, because they are very good. And as you get a little bit more experience, you might invest in some plugins that are from other companies that might be a little bit more specific to what your needs are. Now, this is a really important thing that I want to not forget to say, is that creativity trumps everything, okay? Meaning that you could have a vast variety of microphones. You could have a million different instruments. You could have the latest and greatest. But that not necessarily is always going to be your friend, because creativity will trump all of those. Recording is really about having a sound in your head and getting the expertise and getting the practice and learning how to get that sound from your mind into your computer or into 2-inch tape if you're still using that. And sometimes less options will actually make you be a little bit more creative and a little bit more specific, and you find that your workflow itself will improve. So these are some really important things I want you to consider, particularly with home recording. In the weeks to come, we're going to do another video. We're working with a couple different affiliate companies, which will enable you to get some of the products that we're talking about at a really good price. And whether you happen to live in, say, the US or Australia or abroad, and we'll keep you in touch with them. And that way you can get some great deals on equipment that I've used, that I can endorse, and my colleagues as well. And that's not to say that there's not great products that are coming out every day. There are. But for me, at a certain level, I want to know that a piece of gear, like for example, this now 25-year-old Lerve acoustic guitar, is tried and true. It's well balanced. I know I'm going to get a good sound out of it every time. And There's no substitute for that. So that's again why we were saying sometimes you got to save up and you buy nice, or you will buy twice and 3 times and 4 times, and then it gets to be very expensive. So it's important that you make some good informed decisions. It's also important that you check out some of the resources that we'll put below in the upcoming months, because there are some channels that are exclusively dedicated to the art of recording. Here we're a little bit more based about songwriting, and just understand that engineering is like that songwriting. You just got to keep honing that skill, and when you do write a great song, we want you to be able to capture it well. And then when you've recorded those songs, if it's something that we're excited about, we're going to get it out there and show our audience as well. So till next time, you keep rocking, you keep writing. We'll see you soon.